Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Sunday service of Now Creations. Let me just say at the beginning, just nice to be here with you. We really are just one spirit, one universal spirit. And although we individuate, there is that universal presence at the very center of our beings. I know that we feel that, and may this be your experience throughout the day. Just a couple of other comments to mention. Tonight we'll be having our Eckhart Tolle, The New Earth, from 6 to 7:30. Very much welcome you to join us. And also on Monday evening, our meditation from 7 to 8. It has been so fun, so enjoyable. I encourage you to join us if you're able to do so. And one last reminder, on Christmas Eve, Christmas Day morning, and Christmas Day night, and New Year's Eve, New Year's Day morning, and New Year's Day evening, we will be having gatherings, services, etc. We'll send all of those to you by way of email. Just encourage you to join us as you're able to do so. Let's begin. It's been very edifying for me personally to witness your responses to our series of teachings on moving it forward. We are learning to show up much more differently from the old selves that we used to be. This shift from how we have seen ourselves in the past to the new possibility of how we can see ourselves into the future is the topic of today's teaching, entitled The New You. I will begin with an inspirational phrase that was popularized by Neale Donald Walsch. Then focus in on what that phrase might mean for us today, and then focus on several steps to make that phrase practical and real in our lives. Again, you might want to take some notes. Let's begin with that inspirational phrase from Neale Donald Walsch, especially popularized in his wonderful trilogy of books, Conversations with God. In his writings, Walsch gave us this wonderful teaching. He encouraged us to be the grandest version of the greatest vision of who we are. Let me repeat that. He encouraged us to be the grandest version of the greatest vision of who we are. There are two parts to this teaching, both of which are important. The first is to be the grandest version of who we are. But the second will be the starting point for us, namely being the grandest vision of who we are, the greatest vision of who we are. Surely we want to be the grandest version of this vision, but the foundational notion, the foundational element is to be the greatest vision of who we are. What has changed for us is the greatest vision of who we are. Let me put this change into a brief statement, and then I will explain. The statement is this: we have changed from being a personality to being a presence. I want to repeat that. We have changed from being a personality to being a presence. Let me explain. For many of us, when we considered what it was to be the greatest vision of who we are, we understandably focused on developing our human talents and to become the very best person we were capable of being in the world. We were developing our personality self. The talents we were able to develop from our intellectual understanding of life, how to make a living, and living socially with others have been very, very important. And we have used those talents quite successfully. We have, developed our personalities in association with others, and have made a nice living for ourselves. Until something began to change within us. Despite being successful as a human personality, for which we worked very hard, there just seems to have been something that was missing. Even when we became the grandest version of our greatest vision as a personality self, even when we were very successful, even when people seemed to love us, and even when we seemed to have everything the world could possibly offer, something seemed to be missing. Things were, well, not quite right. There was a sense of still missing that something, that gnawing sense that the fulfillment of the personality self was simply not enough. Thus, for many of us, the journey into our spirituality began. We began our search for what would be ultimately satisfying. We began our search for what might fill us up from the inside once we had acquired all of the things from the outside and still were dissatisfied. We knew that something was missing. We knew that we had to do, in popular terms, a makeover. We just knew that we hadn't come to the grandest version of the greatest vision because we felt that something was still missing. So we searched and we searched, and we engaged with other people who were also searching. And eventually, we gathered enough consciousness to shift our understanding of who we were. We came to the conclusion that we were more than a personality. Now that is quite a shift. We came to the conclusion that we were a presence, not just a personality. Of course, we have a personality, but it is not who we are. We are a presence. Let me explain. We eventually began to see ourselves as a child of the God Spirit. Well, what does that mean? It means that each day we consciously begin our day and we hold our attention throughout the day on the God presence that is within us. And this God presence within us is something that we are now able to consciously hold throughout the course of the day. We're able to maintain a consistency of holding this presence. Yes, of course, there may be momentary occasions of being challenged, but we know how to reconnect to the presence. This presence, this awareness that we are of the God Spirit, is really something. It's a conscious awareness that I, you, we are participations in a larger energy. And it is this larger energy that each one of us truly is. It's neat. It's just neat because the more one begins to become this presence, the more it becomes you. It becomes you. Actually, it is quite becoming as you. Now, the question arises then, well, how does this newly accepted presence relate to our personality self? who we thought we were? This is a good question. I'm going to give you a good answer. Your personality self becomes the vehicle to express your presence. Your personality self has all the things you need to express your presence. Your personality has a mind, has emotions, and a body, all of which are necessary to express the presence here in the material realms. Your personality is how you bring heaven to earth. Your personality is how you bring the God presence into everyday living. Your personality self is invaluable, but it just isn't who you are. And it's not in charge of itself. Your presence is now guiding your personality self. Whew, what a relief. What a relief for your personality. In a nutshell, your personality self is not just about me and mine. It's not just a survival instinct anymore, but rather your personality self is beginning to follow the superior intelligence of the presence within you. And your basic instinct is no longer survival. Your basic instinct is love. Isn't that true? Your basic instinct right now is love. And it's so gratifying that whenever you allow this love to come forward, it just works all the time with everyone in every situation. Well, now that we have made this shift from the personality self to the presence self, we still have a second aspect to fulfill in Neil Walsh's quote. Okay, here we go now. Here's the quote. To be the grandest version of the greatest vision of who I am. We have clearly understood what the greatest vision is, namely in my shifting from the personality self to the God presence. So now we can focus on becoming the grandest version of this presence. Wow. Wow. Consciously becoming the grandest version of the God presence. Now, honestly, hasn't that been what you've always wanted to be? The grandest version of your greatest vision. Sometimes just put in a little nutshell, haven't you just always wanted to do the will of God? What I would now like to do then is to map out some considerations of becoming the grandest version of the God presence. These considerations are certainly not intended to try to tell you what to do. You'll know what to do, but rather to suggest to you how you might go about some of these considerations in your life. First, however, two very brief comments. The first comment, know with certainty that you have enough consciousness to shift from personality to presence. You can do this. You have enough consciousness to make this shift. This is what your spiritual path has been about. It has led you to bring awareness into your daily creations here on the planet. You are quite capable of presence. pretty important. You're quite capable of presence. Secondly, don't try to fix your old personality self. Don't try to fix what isn't working anymore. You'll just be wasting time. You are moving beyond not only the old versions of yourself, but you're moving beyond the old vision of yourself. You have changed from personality to presence. Embrace the change. Embrace this change. It's your future from now on and for eternity. Let me now suggest a series of approaches as to how you might be able to embrace the following considerations in your life. Again, I'm not trying to tell you what to do, but rather how you might proceed. First, let's begin where you must begin as you advance from personality to presence. And that is, let's be absolutely clear, with your spiritual practice, with your daily spiritual practice. And I mean primarily meditation. As much as you have progressed in this area, there are three things that I would like to suggest to you that will be helpful to sustain your presence. First one, do not delude yourself to think that you can be inconsistent in your daily practice and still advance. Please do not delude yourself. If you are inconsistent in your daily spiritual practice, you will be inconsistent in your daily presence. Hasn't your experience shown you this? If you're inconsistent in the practice, you'll be inconsistent in the presence. Your daily time with the God Spirit is the basis of being a consistent master in your own life. Many of us now have come to realize this with a realization that not only is our practice important, but something else has entered in. Again, for many of us, we have come to realize the joy of our daily spiritual practice, because it is at this time that you are most you. Joy is now coming into our practice. It's taken time, but there is a joy that just arises within us, knowing that we can be that abiding presence throughout the course of the day. Perhaps even you're surprised by the abiding presence that you've been able to maintain. May I congratulate you. It's quite an accomplishment to have a consistent, abiding presence joyfully in the midst of your day. Wow. Moreover, you have begun to realize the difference between reading something and feeling something. You are learning to go far beyond the thoughts in your mind, and you're moving much more to the depths of feeling within your God Spirit. Please note, you will not read yourself into presence. You will not read yourself into presence. Remember how many books you read. While reading can be helpful, it is absolutely secondary to the experience of meditation at your feeling level. Thoughts do little to change your sense of self. I believe we should follow the advice of Paramahansa Yogananda. Read a little, meditate more, think about God all the time. It's the feeling that moves you into presence. It's the feeling that abides with you. I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. Now, the second point for our spiritual practice is one that has been stressed by us many, many times over the past couple of weeks. Here it is. It takes time to absorb the presence of the God Spirit within. It takes time in silence to begin to experience the shift from personality into presence. It takes time in stillness to experience the integration of the God Spirit within your soul spirit. You are leaving the old personality. You're leaving the old realms of the third and fourth dimension, but oftentimes they can still maintain their grip on you. So may I suggest a practice for you that I now regularly do. Please consider doing this. Usually in the late afternoon, I simply sit in my easy chair and I am quiet, usually for a half hour, but usually, I should say, more than likely 45 minutes. I then focus my attention on the presence within me that I have activated through the consistency of my spiritual practices. And I just sit and I absorb the presence into my being. I just sit and I absorb, breathing in, breathing out. I do this pretty much every day. The absorption is a wonderfully satisfying experience of feeling the presence. That the best part is the afterglow of the experience. This term afterglow, while often associated with sexual intimacy, is experienced in an exalted way in spiritual intimacy with the God Spirit. Barbara Marx Hubbard called this supra-sexual awareness. Supra, above, sexual awareness. These moments of joyful absorption of the presence are very important. They become the joy of spiritual intimacy, and the afterglow continues. The afterglow continues. Now, the third point. Let me put it to you in the form of two questions. First, do you have a daily regimen, a daily routine of spiritual practice? It's an important question. Secondly, however, do you have a daily regimen that works for you? That's the key. Is it working for you? It's a time for each one of us to develop a daily regimen because as we do the daily regimen, from awakening in the morning to meditation and whatever other practices we do through the course of the evening, it's the daily regimen that brings us that peace and helps to sustain the presence within us. Again, I want to tell you how important the daily regimen is, but again, stressing a daily regimen that works for you. If you would like to talk about this sometime, or just go over maybe a regimen, and if I can be helpful, I'd be very happy to do so. It is the joy, it's the fun, it's the anticipation of engaging in our daily spiritual regimen that makes the presence so much more real for us. Your personality self might balk initially at doing this, but your presence self is more likely to say, I like this. I like this. In conclusion, I've presented only the first consideration of becoming the grandest version of the greatest vision of who we are. The shift from a limited personality self into a limitless presence of the God Spirit. I will focus on other considerations in future teachings, but rest assured, you have the first and the most important step in the process, developing a daily spiritual program that works for you. This is your new beginning, shifting, elevating from personality into presence. So important. We're ready. Let me now take you into meditation, and what a joy it is to do so. Let us begin as we normally do, by just focusing on the breath. And again, allowing the breath to do what it does. Allow it to settle your body, reduce your mind chatter, and bring your soul, the inner you, to the fore. Please begin. And now would you simply acknowledge, well, here I am. Here I am. This is me. Now, how many times have you said, I just want to be the best that I'm able to be? How many times have you said that? I just want to be my best self. And then how many times have you said, I just want to do the will of God. I just really want to do what I think God is asking me to do. So now you're at the point where you can combine these two statements. Where being your best self is doing the will of God by consciously being in the presence that you know yourself to be. Say it again. You can combine these statements now, being your best self and the will of God by being in the presence consciously of the God Spirit within you. Now, are you up to it? I know the sincerity of your desire. But I also know the challenge of that desire. You must be willing to change, to expand, from a more self-centered, limited personality to a more universal, God-spirited presence. This willingness to change from personality to presence, it's really the bottom line that each one of us faces. Moving beyond the little self-centered into the more universal, spirit-centered. you have achieved enough consciousness to make the shift. It is a shift. We have to help each other. But each of us has the consciousness to do so. May I suggest also that you have all the tools and you know the tools. Just a matter of developing a daily routine that brings you into presence, preferably from the moment of awakening throughout the course of the day. Now, let's be clear. What we're doing is serious. It demands attention. But quite frankly, what we're doing is fun. It's the greatest joy. It gives you the most kicks out of life. See things from a much different perspective. And many of us experience the afterglow, that abiding presence within us that's becoming more and more our identity. Barbara Marx Hubbard was right on target. Supra, above, supra, sexual awareness. Don't forget, daily spiritual practice that works for you.
Peace resides, faith abounds, and love abides. The light shines bright to illumine love without, love within. I honor thee, I honor thee. Namaste, I honor thee, I honor thee, I honor thee. Namaste, I honor thee. When you are where you need to be, within that space, I honor thee. Seen through eyes of illusion, seen through spirit, we are one. I honor thee, I honor thee, I honor thee. Namaste, I honor thee, I honor thee, I honor thee. Namaste, I honor thee. Namaste, I honor
Well, let's have some fun today. Let's take those words of Paramahansa to heart. Read a little, meditate more, but most of all, just think about the presence and allow it to do its thing. Afterglow. Namaste.